So what remains to discuss today
Okay.
is medal for the defense of Kiev.
Oh, Kiev.
Kiev.
Wow.
And medal for the defense of Kiev. Again, Kiev was one of the major campaigns in
Yeah.
World War II. But there were other major campaigns for which a medal was never issued. For example, the Battle of Kursk. People often ask me, was there a medal for the Battle of Kursk? And the simple answer is no. Kursk was not, first of all, was not that major of a city. And also the battle is just called the Battle of Kursk.
Right.
It never took place in Kursk proper.
Okay.
It was on the flanks. It was the bulge that centered around Kursk, the Soviet protrusion into the German lines that Germans were trying to cut off.
Yes.
But they never got to Kursk in that battle. And the other areas, Belgorod, Ariol, they were not quite important enough to make it necessary to make a medal. There were other places that were simply a catastrophe. Like Battle of Kharkov, I mentioned just before, the terrible outcome of the Second Battle of Kharkov. Very unfortunate outcome of the Third Battle of Kharkov when it changed hands and Germans captured it once again in their counteroffensive in 1943. It was an embarrassment. So there was never a medal for the defense of Kharkov. And there are some other places that were important battles, but there was never a medal for defending that area or taking it. Kiev, on the other hand, was a major city, of course, but it was also a major embarrassment, a major catastrophe for the Soviet army.
Yes.
So initially there was no medal for the defense of Kiev. It was kind of painful memory that Soviet leadership didn't want to bring.
Okay.
Kiev, first of all, was lost. And second of all, most importantly, a large Soviet army group was completely or nearly completely destroyed there.
Wow.
Most of the troops that defended Kiev got cut off, got into a massive German cauldron, hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
And never made it out.
A whole group.
The person, a very capable general who was in charge of the defense, General Kirponos, got killed.
Wow.
Army general. All of his staff got lost, got killed, practically everybody. Some troops managed to break out, but that's just a minority. Majority were destroyed.
Yes.
They achieved the same, to an extent, thing as some other early Soviet defensive campaigns by, first of all, drawing a large number of German troops, selecting them from their main effort in Moscow, which came later, setting their timetable, and we know how it all ended in Moscow with Russian winter, with Soviet troops from the Far East being able to be brought in, and that made a huge difference on the outcome of the battle. If not for places like Kiev, Moscow would most certainly be lost.
Right.
So they did play a role. They did make a very heroic stand, the Soviet troops there, but it was a catastrophe. So, like other Soviet campaign medals for defensive campaigns, be it Moscow or Caucasus or Polar region or Stalingrad, Odessa, Sevastopol, this medal was not instituted until much, much, much later. And it's, you may ask why they would suddenly remember this place and make a special medal. In 1961, who was the Soviet leader in 1961?
Khrushchev.
And Khrushchev was one of the people responsible for the defense. He was a political operative, but he held a major post.
Yes.
And later on, he was in charge of partisan movement in Ukraine. But until then, he was very instrumental in trying to make it possible for Kiev to remain Soviet. And actually, that was the promise of Soviet propaganda, that Kiev will forever remain Soviet. It was not to pass, but Khrushchev now was the Soviet leader, and there was a massive campaign, psychopathy, same with, to a lesser degree, of course, but there was a cult of personality, similar, resembling almost the cult of personality of Stalin before.
Yeah, yeah.
And every effort was made by every Soviet major official to please Khrushchev. And probably for that reason, in 1961, all of a sudden, for the anniversary of the defense, they gave him, I guess, a gift of instituting a special medal for the defense of Kiev. At that point, of course, technology had changed, and therefore Defense of Kiev medal, if you look at it, it looks just like any other Soviet medal from the period, just like any Jubilee medal from 1965, for example, or 75. It has eyelet struck with the medal. There's only one variety, one version of it, and it's the same as would be variation 3 of medal for the defense of Caucasus, or variation 3 of polar region. It has this rounded eyelet, which is distinctly different from variation 2 eyelet, or variation 1 eyelet especially. See, here's variation 1, here's variation 2, and you can see how it's rounded.
That's right.
But at the same time, even though it's round, it's one-piece construction.
Yes.
There's no sorter.
Yeah. Right, there's one piece. Wow.
It's a single piece.
Okay.
Because all of the medals were pretty much made at the same time, there are no other versions.
Okay.
Because the battle was such a catastrophe for the Soviet army, because so few people actually escaped from Kiev. And of course, fewer were still alive in 1961, 62, when they actually got to awarding the medal. There were relatively few issued, only 105,000 in total, which is a small. That's compared to medal
number
for the defense of Caucasus. 800 plus 870,000. Defense of polar region, well over 300,000.
Okay.
And here we have 100,000.
Okay.
So 3 times fewer than medal for the defense of polar region. Yet the medal is relatively inexpensive because, again, it's demand and supply. Polar region, everybody knows, it was important. Murmansk convoys, people heard about it. It's an earlier medal. This one is by definition way after the war.
So the low numbers is simply because of the survivors.
Because so much fewer survivors.
Okay.
Very large number of people took part in the campaign.
Okay. Could a family with someone that was KIA at that campaign apply for it?
Interestingly enough, no.
Can't.
It was only issued to survivors.
Oh, wow.
And in general, that's the reason for Sevastopol or Odessa being so few survivors.
Those were the rules.
Those were the rules. There were some exceptions to those rules. There were a couple of declarations in the Soviet Union that could be issued to the next of kin, even if they were awarded posthumously.
Yes.
But there was no, for most of the Soviet Union's existence, except for very last couple of years, there was no such thing as Gold Star medal issued posthumously. They would issue a title. The title of Hero of the Soviet Union could be, and in many cases was, given posthumously. But that only meant a title. It didn't mean that the actual medal was given to anybody. There would be no medal.
Interesting. Just the title without
the actual medal.
The gold medal.
Without the actual gold medal. So there are far fewer gold medals in existence that were ever in existence than the number of titles bestowed.
Wow. That's fascinating.
And now, speaking of the document, of course, you would expect that the document for the medal looks, again, just like any late war Soviet campaign document. And also pretty much like any document for the Jubilee medals. And here you never see, practically never see a military unit issuing the document, because by that time these were retirees.
Gotcha. So you wouldn't make a mention of what unit.
Right. It's just the name of the individual, the date of issue, and what particular military commissariat. Usually it was military commissariat that was in charge of issuing medals.
Okay.
So wherever he lived, whatever town, city, and district, it would have the appropriate seal.
Yes.
And the name of the military commissar.
Oh, the actual signature.
The actual commissar's signature.
The commissariat of that time.
But again, the name, if it's not a very common name, it may provide an important enough clue, a good enough clue, and you can actually try and search in the archives.
Yes.
That were published online and see what he actually did during the war.
That's right. What other awards that he was issued?
Exactly. That, and also if he was possibly decorated with something, at least his place of service. In many cases, it comes to light. And to finish my discussion of Kiev medal, I must mention one very curious case. I said that there were a couple of oddities here where you least expect. One such oddity is the medal for the defense of Caucasus with rifles. The other one is so-called mint error of medal for the defense of Kiev. And what that error means is on the back, as you remember, all Soviet defensive campaign medals have this motto for our Soviet motherland.
Yeah.
There's not so much a version, but a funny version of this medal, if I can use the word, that instead of this motto for our Soviet motherland has a date. And the date you see on the back of a medal, you only see on Soviet medals for capture or liberation of major cities, such as Warsaw, Prague, Berlin. So there is one medal that has a date on the back, April 1945, date of actually the capture of Vienna. And how it happened is a big mystery. In all likelihood, in around 1993, that's the consensus opinion among collectors, based on some persistent rumors, and no documents, of course, exist. But in 1993, where a couple of years after Soviet Union collapsed, Russian economy was in ruins, and it was pretty much Wild West all around the country. Crime was rampant.
Yes.
And supposedly, at the mint, they started producing some of the medals during the night shift to sell to tourists.
Oh, wow.
Or to sell to collectors.
Oh, wow.
It was not on mass scale. They probably only pulled it off a few times at most, or maybe once.
No
But
kidding.
while they were doing this night shift, quote unquote, run of the medals, one of the medals that they produced was Defense of Kiev with the wrong date. They mistakenly put the wrong date on the medal. There are some different opinions about it. Some think that this was a legitimate error. In all likelihood, this was this illegal run of the medals. Interestingly enough, because those erroneous medals, or mint mistakes, are pretty scarce, they become collectible. Even though nobody was, in all likelihood, nobody was ever awarded this one.
Yes.
They have become a collectible item in its own right.
Okay.
And they are far more expensive because of their rarity than a regular medal for a regional medal.
Yes.
Can say for the defense of Kiev. Now they're still in production, original from that standpoint. They're just non-award.
Wow. So this very scarce variation, have you ever come across one?
Oh yes, a number of times. They used to be not so much common, but obtainable easily, more or less. Lately, they've become much more scarce. The last one we had, we sold for about $375.
Still not
reasonable.
bad. Still not bad for
And
very, very
decent,
scarce.
Not perfect, but decent condition.
Yeah.
They typically don't show wear, but they may have tarnish, oxidation. One curious thing about them, and there was another medal that suffered the same fate. A liberation of Belgrade, also with an error, and their error was reversed. Instead of the date of liberation of the city, it says for our Soviet motherland. So it's
now, what is it? The same motivation behind that?
The same motivation, same
profit motivation,
same date of issue, or non-issue rather, date of manufacture, more or less.
Wow!
And they lacked the proper. At that point, they were using this technological process that didn't have gilt on the medal, but there was at least some kind of protective cover. So it doesn't have any of it, so it oxidizes more easily than your typical medal, and so sometimes they have a lot of tarnish and even blemishes.
Right. Well, I would imagine there should be a run on this medal, due to the current conflict in Ukraine
Defense
right
of
now.
Kiev, it's a sad development.
Has there been more recent collector interest in the?
Perhaps,
medal, right?
I saw some people buying this one and that 250th anniversary of Kiev medal. 1500th anniversary of Kiev medal. But it's not the most scarce of the bunch, so we are not talking about, prices haven't gone through the stratosphere.
Right.
For a nice one, in really near perfect condition. Perfect condition, you expect to spend maybe $80 or $90.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts.
So just
for a standard.
unbelievably affordable.
Oh yes, it's still very, very.
Yeah.
This one is in about as nice a condition as they come. It's not mint, which I actually like, because if it's minty one, chances are it was never issued.
Yeah.
And this one does have some wear and age, but just a tiny bit of it. You still see
we like
shiny
that.
surface.
We like that. Yeah. That's
on
right.
the background. The ribbon looks old, but still in very nice shape.
Yes.
You can never tell if it's an original ribbon or not.
Yes,
It's the original ribbon. Yeah, there's no way to tell, but at least we know that it's an old one. It has age without being too.
Now, have other countries besides Russia produced Russian ribbons, Soviet ribbons?
Interesting question. Yes, there was a medal, actually 2 medals, produced in Czechoslovakia.
Oh, okay.
For local resistance fighters who took part in liberation of Prague. There was a popular uprising there against the Germans.
Yes.
In the last days of World War II.
That's right.
And Prague Czech resistance, ironically assisted by a former Russian so-called volunteer corps in the German army. Lots of troops, who were stationed there. They staged a rebellion against the Germans.
Wow.
And helped the Red Army to liberate the city. And as at the end of the war, immediately after the war, there was a medal instituted in the Soviet Union for the liberation of Prague. And Czech authorities took it upon themselves to produce medal that they awarded, that they produced at the mint in Prague.
Yeah.
Called the same. And this medal is actually slightly different from the Soviet version, and naturally because the technological process was different. It has different suspension. It has locally produced ribbon that looks distinctly different. It's the same color scheme. It's the right ribbon. It's just not a Soviet-made ribbon. By the way, those medals are very collectible and pretty scarce. And another medal that was produced in Czechoslovakia at the same time, within probably 2 years after the war, 3 years after the war, is a medal for victory over Germany. Again, it has very distinct mark of Czechoslovak production.
Now these pieces, we will encounter these pieces in future episodes.
Absolutely.
Oh boy, something to look forward to once again. It's an endless well.
Yes, something you may want to be
well.
on the lookout for.
Yes.
There are fakes, and there are also legitimate medals
Yes.
produced outside of, believe it or not, produced outside of the Soviet Union.
Wow. Well, collectors, if you haven't noticed yet, the economy on collecting Soviet and Imperial Russian militaria is just very reasonable. That's the best word that we can say.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. You can still collect Soviet World War II medals without having to mortgage your house.
Without breaking, mortgage a house, selling your firstborn, breaking the bank.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, yes.
On that note,
on that note, right?
On that note, what are we missing?
I was wondering, there was something missing. What in the world are we missing? Let me try to think about this.
My mouth is dry.
Because you've been babbling, and your babbling just makes everybody thirsty. It's a conundrum.
We have a way to help them?
I think we do.
And nothing works better than a nice bottle of Bordeaux wine.
You're kidding me. Yes. You're absolutely right. Yes. All right, then. Let me spin this camera around, and let's get to action.
Let's do it. Agenda, guess what just magically appeared on the table right in front of us?
Where did that come from?
My desk. Oh, where it came from? It's a long story, but basically it's a less known area of France, winemaking. But it's a very famous from the other standpoint. Have you heard of Three Musketeers?
Yeah.
Not the chocolate bar, but the actual story.
Oh, really? There was a story? Oh, yes. Of course, yes. The Three Musketeers. Yes.
Well, there was the fourth guy who was the real badass. And his name was D'Artagnan.
Yes.
He was the one who picked all the fights.
Right.
Like almost got killed by all three of these.
That's right. Yes.
Who would become his best buddies.
Okay.
Well, that number one troublemaker, he was from the area known as Gascogne.
Okay.
And Gascogne is the southwesternmost area of France, just before the Basque area and Spain. Like to the south of it is Spain.
Yeah.
So it's southwest of France.
Okay.
And little known fact is they make awesome wine that few people know about.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of these wines that they make is called Madiran.
Mm-hmm.
And remember how we discussed tonic wines?
Yes.
Well, you tell me what you think about this one, because
Okay.
this one is mega masculine.
Okay.
It's supposed to be very tannic.
Okay.
Actually, the grape that it's made of
Mm-hmm.
is called tanat, most of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they add, usually in Cabernet Sauvignon, there's one other, fire, I think it's called.
Yes.
Fire. Lesser known grape.
Mm-hmm.
But the main part of it is, by far, is tanat.
Wow.
And tanat is a very tiny grape.
Okay.
Thick skin, black grape.
On a tannic scale of like 1 to 10, what are we
Boy,
looking at?
this is 9.
Oh, a 9. Okay.
Or maybe 10, I don't know. It takes a long time to develop. Now, lately, they started playing little tricks with it, like they invented modern ways of making it, so we can actually drink it after 8 years or 7 years or so. This one is, see, it's from 2018.
Oh, another
so
great
it's
year.
6,
Yeah.
so we're talking 6 years.
6 years.
It's already drinkable.
Okay.
It would probably be better, but it's not necessary, because now if you drank this wine the way it was made 50 years ago or 30 years ago, you wouldn't be able to drink it because it's too tiny. But
Okay.
this one, I guess, but you'll be the judge.
Okay.
It's already good enough because they
Yes.
did it slightly different. You know what makes the grape tannic is all the skins,
Mm-hmm.
the tannins and skins of the grape.
That is what.
That's why white wine doesn't have it, because they don't use skins to make white wine. It's only in red wine that you get that.
Okay.
And also some of the stems,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the pits, they go into this maceration process that they call it, and that's what leaches tannins out of the skin and so forth into whatever pulp is made to.
That's what gives it that quality.
It gives it, this
Gotcha.
drying quality. So
Quality.
this wine is supposed to have a lot of it.
Yes, yes. Oh, not too much, I'm Asian.
Oh, Asian. Everybody's something nowadays.
That's right. Wow, look at this. 93 points.
93
that.
points by,
Wow.
I think it's
Okay.
Ida Parker, wine advocate, wine enthusiast.
That's a hint. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. For a great wine.
So this is okay,
Okay.
but very little known. It's to the south of Bordeaux,
Okay. South of Bordeaux.
Gascogne, D'Artagnan's place.
Yes. Oh, nice aroma.
See how it nicely ties the tongue, kind of.
Oh, yeah. But still, as you would say, approachable. Right? Approachable. That's the word.
They're now trying to reduce this maceration time for this wine, like artificially, like take the pulp out
Yeah.
quickly enough, soon
Yeah.
enough, so it doesn't have too much overpowering tannins. And it's very fruity at the same time.
Very, very,
Like
very fruity.
Yeah, I feel the plum, maybe apricot, various fruits, dry fruit.
Okay. Plums and apricot.
Little bit, not too much of either.
Oh, very good wine.
Yeah,
Very
Like
good
it?
wine. Yeah.
Awesome. You know what it's great with?
Yeah.
Duck.
Oh, duck.
Very fat food, and the duck is their specialty in that part of the world.
Oh, so this wine
That
will
neck
be
of the
able
woods.
to cut through the fat, so to speak.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Goes great with duck.
Yeah.
And chicken, I assume, right? Some fried chicken.
Better be a really fat chicken.
Some Popeyes.
But I
yeah.
would prefer duck.
yeah.
No
Very
disrespect to
nice.
chicken.
No. Oh no. This is a very fine wine. Very fine wine.
I think it's a real discovery. It's one of those things that are sort of obscure,
Yeah.
out of mainstream.
And this Madiran, how much we're talking about if we were to try to
Very
purchase it?
inexpensive. Maybe, if I recall correctly, somewhere in $25 range
That's it, right?
at most.
Yeah. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get.
I mean,
good wine.
I catch it usually. I look at websites that I can recommend.
Yeah, for deals.
They don't pay me anything.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But there are a few places where you can search for those, and sometimes they have a great,
Yeah.
so you can get it for a song literally.
Wow, this is fantastic.
But it's not it's not. It can get very expensive. It's some very known special
Yes.
shop, but this one is not.
But as
it's
we
still
know,
very good.
we don't need to break the bank
Exactly.
to get fine
wine, you need
from
to know.
France. Yeah,
need to know
especially
what you're
Bordeaux.
French wines in general are a bargain. That's why I like French wines, because you can get consistent quality for very little money. Comparable
Right.
American wine,
Mhm.
sorry to say, or Italian wine even, or most other places would cost you significantly more.
I see.
So it's not that you cannot get good American wine, California wine.
It's just going to cost more.
It will cost you much more.
Right. Something on the on par.
Yeah.
With this. Wow. Wow. Yeah. No, you're right. I can imagine having this with some duck. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
we should try that.
Perfect pairing. Oh yes. Well, you have some duck.
No, not running around here right now, but
I see.
Someday for dinner.
I see. Wow. This is fantastic. And what an ending to our our series on campaign medals today. The actually. If I was in the Arctic,
yeah,
it would
warm me up for sure.
Fantastic. Well, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Yes, and
to heroes of the past
and present and future. Well, not the future, but yes, of course. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Cheers. Fantastic.
Okay.
Good stuff.